Welcome back to my channel, Dr. Nick Analyzes. Yesterday I was flicking through YouTube and a YouTube video popped up that I thought I might like to react to. The YouTube video is called Zayn Malik Opens Up About Managing His Anxiety, and it's by a YouTube channel called Call Her Daddy. Right, I've never heard of this YouTube channel, Call Her Daddy. Lots of subscribers though, and so it must be pretty popular, and the fact that they've got Zayn Malik on the channel means that they must be pretty well known. I do not know this. I know who Zayn Malik is. So a long time ago I used to love a UK TV program called X Factor, and Zayn Malik was put together with 4 other lads to make this group called One Direction, who of course went on to become this sort of like global phenomena. Do you know what, at the time I predicted it as well, right? I said to my friends, I reckon these boys are going to be bigger than the Beatles, which might have been a stretch, but like there was an energy about them that was like puppy-like, that that made me want to watch them. Do you know what I mean? And I figured other people would feel like that as well, and of course they've gone on to do wonderful things. It's funny, with that energy that they had, maybe part of the lure of that energy was they seemed so happy-go-lucky. You know, they seem to be pretty unafflicted with like some of the challenges that can happen in life. But sooner or later, life catches up with all of us, no matter who we are. And so now we have a YouTube video about Zayn Malik managing his anxiety. So I thought it might be a good thing to react to. And so that is where we are. I hope you like what I go for. Let's do it.
Let's talk about anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you have lightly talked about it in times, and I just want to talk to you about like how anxiety affects your life. What has it done in terms of playing a part in your personal life, in your career? Like, just talk to me about what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, so I think we kind of touched on it a bit earlier, like when we were talking about, you know, like the nature of our job, you know, like what we were doing in the band, and the situation being on stage in front of thousands of people. I think it's a really normal place to experience anxiety, you know, like you.
Right, I'm going to stop at this point, because he's made a really, really good point there, which often gets lost in the narrative about mental health. Sometimes people, they place mental health problems as abnormalities within people. Do you know what I mean? Like an anxiety, having anxiety is seen as something that occurs because someone is deficient in some way relative to a normal response to contexts. And so what he's saying is, I was on stage in front of thousands of people, and so, you know, feeling anxious was pretty much the normal way to be, and I can't agree more with that, you know? Sometimes I worry about the medical model being applied to psychological problems. Like, oh, you've got anxiety, take a pill. It's because you've got, you know, some sort of imbalance in your biochemistry or something. I'm like, no. Like, if you're going to, you know, sing in front of thousands of people, you're probably going to feel a bit anxious about it. If you're going to go for a job interview, you're probably going to feel a bit anxious about it. If you're going to do public speaking, you're probably going to feel a bit anxious about it. If you're about to ask someone out on a date, you're probably going to feel anxious about it. You know, this is a normal response to like what is a pretty aversive situation.
Go and perform in front of, you know, a lot of different people that you don't know who they are, and it's not a natural thing to do, you know, in terms of everyday life. You don't just talk to thousands of people, you know, so it was something that I had to, you know, learn to adjust. Anxiety for me, I've learned is a feeling that now has a word, you know, and I feel like for generations human beings have felt it and not really even been able to put, you know, the finger on what it is, but we overcome it, you know, and certain things in life can change your perspective on them things. And I think for me, like, since I've had my daughter and since she was born, like, the main thing in my mind is like trying to be a good example to her, like in terms of, you know, I can do things and I can achieve things and I can overcome things and you can do this too. And to let things like, you know, a feeling stop you from doing that after having a child feels like a really small thing. Like, I feel like I've like had to step up, you know, as
Oh my words, like the wisdom there. Like that, he's speaking therapist speak here. I mean, maybe he's worked with a therapist to sort of like have this perspective on anxiety. See, the thing about anxiety is anxiety by itself isn't actually that much of a problem. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't feel great. I understand that. I have anxiety myself about various things, including teaching, as in giving lectures in front of hundreds of people and stuff. But anxiety, that feeling, you have to ask yourself, okay, if that feeling is not an abnormal response to a difficult situation, if it's a normal response to having, if those are normal feelings relative to what's going on in our lives, then the next question is, okay, what do we do about them? Now, like, there's an easy way to reduce anxiety, okay? It's to not do anything. If I don't give my lectures, I don't have the anxiety. If Zayn Malik doesn't go out on stage and sing in front of thousands of people, he doesn't have the anxiety. But then what he's done is he's let a feeling dictate his actions. And as a result, his life has gone smaller. And so actually, when he's talking about overcoming here, he's talking about the process of taking anxiety with him while he does things that are personally meaningful. And he's saying that having his daughter sort of like made him want to be a role model for that. Like, look, this stuff is going to come up, but you can still live a life of fulfillment even when it's there. That's essentially what he's saying, Like sometimes in workshops, I give an example. I say, right, imagine I'm a socially phobic person, but I also want to build relationships with people. I want to have a chance at romance and having friendships and stuff. And imagine I get invited to a party. Imagine I say yes because I'm like, right, I want to make friendships. I want to have romance. The day of the party comes. What's my body doing? My heart's beating fast. My palms are sweaty. What's my mind doing? My mind is racing. Remember the last time that you went to a party? Remember when you dropped that drink on someone's toe? You're just not a sociable sort of person. Maybe it's saying, there are other opportunities to socialise coming up. You can just miss this one and go to those ones. Or, do you know what? You don't even have to socialise in person. You can just socialise online. My mind is coming up with all of these different things to try and make me avoid going to this event. So I'm walking to the party. I've got all these feelings going on. I've got all these thoughts going on. And do you know what? They're not pleasant. And like with a lot of things that aren't pleasant, we don't want to have it. We want to get rid of it. And so I think, do you know what? I'm going to get rid of it. And I turn around and I go back to my house and I watch Netflix. What's the immediate thing that I feel? I feel relief. Because I've avoided this threatening, aversive, anxiety-provoking situation. When I wake up the next day, what do I feel? I'm gutted. I'm gutted because my life has gone smaller. I haven't done something that could have brought me meaning and fulfillment as a result of a feeling. So what he's saying there isn't, hey, I've got a magic wand here that helps me get rid of anxiety. What he's talking about here is having his anxiety, because there is no magic wand, and still moving towards the things that are important to him. Like, it's really cool stuff, this. This is pressing right on the point of mental health generally. Like, we seem to think that it's possible to magic wand it away relative to having it and taking it with us while we control our behavior in meaningful ways.
As a man, or just as a person, and be this example to her that doesn't succumb to these feelings. That's why I'm even doing this interview. Like I used to get a lot of anxiety around like having a conversation like this, just in this kind of environment, and I want her to be able to look at me and be like, yo, my dad's doing this, he's the man, he's cool. He's a cool guy. So that's helped me a lot for sure.
That is so fucking cool. Obviously my mom's a psychologist, so I grew up and I think mental health was not a conversation for most families, and hopefully it will be. But like, I've watched my mom talk to so many people and talk them through how to get over a panic attack, how to get over anxiety, how to not get over it, but like manage it, live with it, be okay to go about your everyday life. I think sometimes if you don't have anxiety, people look at people with anxiety like, just get the fuck over it. And I think it shows up in everyone's lives in such different ways. And I
don't think that's the way you can look at it. I think everybody's situation is individual. Yes. I think it takes an individual experience then to happen for somebody to overcome that too. Totally.
if you think about the first time you can recall in your life experiencing anxiety, did you experience anxiety prior to fame?
For sure.
Like,
Yeah.
take me to like a moment in your life where you remember being like, wow, I didn't know that was anxiety, but now I do.
But I enjoyed it. That
What?
was the thing. Yeah. Like I enjoyed being in that feeling. And then got to a certain point, I think, where it just became too much. Like it just was weighing on me. That feeling of like anticipation, and then getting the adrenaline, and then the after feeling of that, you know. As a young kid, I loved it. Like I loved being on stage and I loved performing. It was like a free space for me to go and be a character, because it was, you know, I was playing a role in some little school performance. It was nothing serious. When it became a thing that had a lot of weight behind it in terms of, you know, people watching and stuff, then you're gonna have you're gonna have natural feelings of anxiety.
Yeah, people staring at you, judging you, writing about you, following you, taking pictures of you. That's a lot.
This is hard for him, this conversation. You can see it. You can see it in the way that he's holding himself. You know, like body language experts would say, like when you protect your neck, sort of like what he's doing at the moment, right? It's because you sort of like feel threat, you feel uncomfortable and stuff. You can see that this stuff is hard for him to talk about, and so good on him. You know, he's talking about like using his relationship with his daughter as a way to role model how to be in the world. And here he is being brave and being courageous and sort of like being thoughtful and being kind and generous, right? Because this sort of stuff affects lots of people, these sort of interviews, because they get watched a lot. And here he is he's bringing like those qualities to life, despite the fact that he feels anxiety. He's winning. He's winning. Like, good on him. Good on him for doing this. Like, I appreciate him doing this. I really do. I also think that this girl, whose name I don't know, by the way, from this Call Me Daddy channel, she was really good then at pointing that context changes across that each individual has different contexts which may or may not lead to anxiety, and that I don't think we should ever really be looking at anyone else's experience and saying, just get over it. Why are you having that anxiety? You're not worthy of that anxiety. You don't deserve to have that anxiety. You don't deserve to be in front of me right now and be telling me about how anxious you are, because we haven't lived their life. We don't know about their histories and their context that might lead to anxiety. And so, like, I would never want to be in front of someone and be sort of like invalidating their feelings of anxiety. Everyone is worthy of their anxiety. Everyone gets to have it, because each individual has their own certain set of circumstances and history that lead them to a point in time. And so I think she did really good at just like getting across that idea of, and he did as well, that idea of context. But man, like, what an example, right? As in doing something that's anxiety provoking in order to be the sort of person you want to be. I think parenting did that for me as well a little bit. You know, I want to show my son that the world isn't all happy bunny rabbits, and it can be hard, and when it's hard, you don't have to shut down. You can find a way to do things that are important to you, even when those things are there.
Can you share with us, like, in the heyday of paparazzi and insanity, like, what would be something that would really trigger your anxiety in those days?
Just the idea of like not being able to just do normal things, like to just go outside and like walk out onto the street, you know, like, because where we lived, it was kind of a bit crazy, and there's just people always there, like waiting to take a photo and stuff. And obviously thinking about having a child and like raising her in that environment, it was just very claustrophobic for me. I didn't want her to have to be like exposed to that, because she didn't choose it, you know, like it was a choice that I made. So I was like, we need to get out of here so that she can have some chance of like a normal childhood, you know, where there's not cameras flashing in her face constantly.
Hi, Dad.
What a wise young man. Well, he's not young now, I guess. I'm not sure how old he is. I feel like he's a baby, because when I was watching him on X Factor, he was a baby. But yeah, what a wise young man. Like, I can't imagine how stressful that is, to not be able to leave your house and go to the shop and pick up some milk and sort of like do all those those luxuries that we have as non-famous people. Like, I'm sure fame brings lots of great things, but it also brings that, which must be suffocating. And then you think about the decisions that you've made impacting upon your child's quality of life. Like, I don't care who you are. I don't care what walk of life you're from. I don't care how much money you've got. Our children matter more to us than anything. And so he's thinking, right, like, I can't have people targeting my child because of who I am. I've got to figure out some way of sort of like dampening the attention that could be put on her. And he's probably done that at his own personal expense with regards to career moves and stuff. But like, what was important in those moments, his career or his child? Like, there was never any even choice there for him, which shows to me, you know, a wise young man, you know, someone who on his deathbed knows that he's not going to look back and think, why didn't I do those extra 3 concerts? He's going to look back and think, why didn't I look after my child properly? Do you know what I mean? Like, he's got a grip on what's important in life, and he's making decisions that are in line with that. Like, so much of what he says sort of like aligns with the perspective on anxiety that many psychologists have. Like, you ask yourself, where does anxiety come from, right? And there's like this cool little tale that gets told in the act world, which is, imagine 2 cave people, okay? They're both standing in the savannah. They look up at a bush. It's a blueberry bush, okay? So it represents lunch for them. The one cave person says, there's blueberry bush up there, but look, there's a rustle in it. Right? There's a rustle behind it. It might be a saber-toothed tiger. Do you know what? I'm going to stay here. I'll be hungry. The other cave person goes, it's probably not. It's probably fine. I had to go and get myself some blueberries. That cave person gets eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. Now, the point I'm making there is that we, the people on this planet right now, are the people who have ancestors that successfully avoided threat for multiple generations. We've been bred to feel anxiety about potential threats because that anxiety is functional for us. It helps us to avoid that threat. But of course, today we live in a world where there aren't saber-toothed tigers walking around, and like, the threat that we see is a very different sort of threat. It could be a social threat, like in that party that I was talking about earlier on. My mind is trying to protect me from the threat. But the thing is, these days, our minds, in an attempt to protect us from threats, can stop us from doing things that are really important, like, for example, connection with other human beings. And so what he's talking about there, and which is what I'm talking about, is like becoming aware, putting a word on it, a word on anxiety, becoming aware of it, becoming familiar with those feelings, and not letting those feelings push us around. Having them, picking them up, putting them in our pocket, taking them with us whilst we move our feet towards the things that are important to us. That's exactly what he's done there. Great video, really enjoyed it. Alright, thanks for watching. It's a bit of a different one. I hope you like what I've gone for, and take care.